Glenn, come on. Like, you're telling me John Hufnagel, did you see this coming? John Hufnagel, Toronto, as a senior advisor.
Not really, no. Except for I will say this at Grey Cup. You know, we were talking that in Grey Cup, there like sometimes you just hear stuff come out of the walls. You're walking into your hotel room, and the walls are talking to you as you walk by. And one of the walls said to me that John Hufnagel might be retiring at the end of this season and just stepping away completely, which I thought was interesting. I wouldn't report it until I did some digging to find out whether it was true or not, because you can't just go by the wall talking.
Are you sure you weren't staying at the Coachman on Victoria with the walls talking like that?
They're saying different things. they're saying different things that scare you. But no. So I'm happy for Toronto, to be honest. I think this is a great move by the Argos, by Keith Pelly, to bring a pure football guy, and a guy who's had success in both leagues, by the way, both at the coaching level and GM and management level, and can really bring sort of stability to the Argos situation.
And I was going to ask you, this sounds like a Keith Pelly move. It likely is, as you're saying and confirming. And, when you think about it, it's such the big sports down in Toronto. And when Rogers gets control of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and the way they're elevated Keith Pelly to really overseeing every pro team in Toronto, every team except the Blue Jays, and who knows how that may even change. But it's great to see that Keith Pelly still cares about the CFL and was very involved in the CFL in the past. And, there would be a concern otherwise that maybe Leaf Sports and Entertainment would just sort of let the Argos swim away or wouldn't pay that much attention to them, whatever. But that won't happen with Keith Pelly because he has the passion for this league.
Yeah, in fact, Don, I worked for Keith. At the beginning of my career at TSN, Keith Pelly was in the executive producer role.
Okay.
And I will never forget one of the first meetings that we ever had with Keith at the top of the room, talking to the entire crew, saying that we will respect Canadian football like we do any other sport that we cover. And he was adamant and would be watching, and there would be accountability when it came to, making sure that the coverage of Canadian football was at the same level of respect as any other league in the world. So that passion and that the backing of Canadian football is sincere for Keith. It really is. So I'm not surprised. I heard you guys earlier talking about the what's going on in Toronto and what has been going on. I mean, I think it's not necessarily that they've been pushing the team away or pushing them in the wrong direction. I think it's just sort of a lack of manpower at times. After John Murphy and Mike Clemens, who else is doing a lot of the paperwork and contracts and everything else that has to do with a professional football team, and how many guys, 70 guys and coaches and training staffs and all of that. I mean, there is a lot of work to do there. And not that Hufnagel is going to step in and handle that kind of thing, but it sounds to me like right now Keith Pelly is saying we've got to bring some more support staff in for our coaching staff.
And more money, more budget.
Yeah, budget and scouting staff. When you look at the other teams in the league, much more in-depth scouting staffs and different people around North America that are looking for talent. And Toronto's got to improve in that area too.
It's amazing though. They're a year away from winning the Grey Cup, and we're talking to them like they're second-class franchise. It's somewhat interesting, but. You said it was, I was leaning towards Costanza, and you thought it was going to be Miller in Toronto, and it is.
Yeah. I just, when you look at the resume and you look at, first of all, this is a good hire for the two reasons off the top are that he's been part of a winning organization in the last 3 years. They've won the championship. So he has seen that formula. He understands in our league what type of players he needs, what type of defense he needs, those kind of things to be successful. Mm-hmm. So that's important right out of the gate. And Mike Miller has that because he's been there with Dinwiddie. And then your relationship as a head coach with your quarterback. I believe there are times when that is overlooked by management when they hire a new head coach. And it doesn't mean you have to be a quarterback coach. I mean, Corey Mace has proven that. But it does mean that you have to be able to build a strong relationship of trust between your starting quarterback and your head coach. And he and Chad Kelly have an excellent relationship. Mike Miller and Chad Kelly are professional relationship, but it goes back deeper than just their time in the regular season in Toronto. So it's a good relationship, a strong relationship. Chad Kelly, if he's returning, that's going to be important. And as I mentioned last week, part of what was pulling me towards him all the time, once they got past the Michael O'Shea sort of level, and they realized that they're going to have to look at the assistants moving up, including their own, but outside of their own as well. Once that started happening, I was thinking, in Toronto, for some reason, I don't necessarily agree with it, but for some reason in Toronto, if you have NFL on your resume, you come with more credibility, and therefore you're likely more likely to be hired than a guy who doesn't have the NFL on his resume, and Mike Miller does.
That's the Toronto mentality. So I would think, Glenn, if they hadn't hired Miller as head coach, he was going to Ottawa with his buddy Dinwiddie. I think they were in a situation, I'm guessing anyway, that you either give him the head coaching job or you say goodbye to a guy that's got a tremendous resume.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it sounded like the interviews went very well. I mean, Mike Clemens was talking about how impressed he was with his own assistants that interviewed, and Mike being the leading candidate in that regard. So, yeah, I think I'm not sure if that specifically came up, but there is great loyalty between Mike Miller and Ryan Dinwiddie. I mean, in an article that I read that was written a couple of years ago in Toronto about Miller, he was talking about how Dinwiddie had said when they left Montreal that if he got an opportunity again as a head coach, that he would bring Mike Miller in. And Miller said, I'm paraphrasing, that people say that all the time and it never happens. But for Dinwiddie, it did, and that created a real bond between those two. So, Don, it's probably a good theory that was part of this decision, that they didn't want to lose him.
Press coverage with Glen Suitor for Bronco Plumbing and Heating. What do you think about Tyson Philpot and the alleged number, the reported number that he's getting to stay on with the Montreal Alouettes? And then what is that going to mean for one Samuel Emilus and the Riders?
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. And keep pushing that elastic. Keep pushing the envelope if you can. Keep making it tough for GMs. And, I know the value of Tyson when I talked to Jason Moss throughout the season, and when Davis Alexander and Tyson were hurt at the same time. And he would talk about both of those players with that same level of importance to their franchise. And that's unusual, because the quarterback, when you're talking to coaches, usually is at a different category of discussion. But for Jason, it was both of them were that important to their offense, and you've seen what he can do. So, and here's the other aspect of the salary being pushed. MLS, yes, it's good for all Canadian receivers that are those 1,000-yard potential guys, or that have had 1,000-yard seasons. It'll push the elastic for them too, but it's bigger than that. And I hope American players understand this, that as that gets pushed by the Canadian, because there is an inherent value there, If you have a great Canadian starter, that's important, and that's why their salaries get pushed and bumped. Some Americans look at it a very sort of face value kind of thing and say, well, that doesn't seem fair because I played at Ohio State, he played at Guelph. How come he's getting paid more than I am? And what they should be thinking is, if you take Canadians out of the mix, if you take a Tyson Philpot, who's demanded this level of salary, and you take him out of the mix and you make it the USFL or the XFL, those salaries are going to come way, way down. Across the board, they're going to come way down. Because owners will say, I'll just go get a different receiver from Ohio State or Alabama or wherever. Because there is that kind of supply down there. So the Canadian ratio, and I've talked to some guys that are involved with the PA. I've talked to some guys that are former, members of the PA that are now sort of understanding the importance with regards to salaries continuing to be pushed upwards with Canadian players, and that it affects the American salary too, in a positive way.
Yeah.
So it'll just, it floats the boats a little bit higher for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, league revenue is still going up despite, just marginally, but it's going up $100,000 approximately more for the players this year, Glenn. So I guess that's good. But getting back to the commissioner, if I could for a second, Stuart Johnston, who wants to open up all the salaries of all the players in the league and give the fans all the information. I just like the way he talks about transparency there. And what do you think about the pros and cons of making public all the players' salaries in the CFL?
Yeah, I'll respectfully disagree with those who believe this is a good idea at this point. The reason that they believe, I think anyway, the reason that they believe that it's a good idea is because it'll create discussion when you're building your fantasy teams, and it creates, it creates another avenue of fan engagement, and that's the idea. The problem that I have with it, and I've had this for quite some time. There's a few reasons, but one is, and most importantly, that perception matters. And I have never been in the camp where, as long as people are talking about you positively or negatively, it's a good thing. I have never been in that camp. If people are kicking you, it's not a good thing that they're talking about you. One of the reasons that the commissioner changed the missed single point, eliminating the single point on a missed field goal, one of the reasons he did that was because he wanted to get rid of this, way to kick the league. The people that...
It was a bit embarrassing.
Yeah, for some reason, there are a lot of people in the country that not only don't like Canadian football, but they want to kick it. And for those people, a missed field goal that you win by on a single point is ridiculous. It's a joke. And part of the reason for changing that rule was to get rid of that opportunity, that possibility that someone could make it a punchline. Well, if we still have entry-level salaries that, let's just be honest, aren't overly impressive, entry-level stuff. I mean, if you're Tyson Philpot, you're feeling pretty good about your paycheck right now. And you can get there. You can get to a really nice professional football paycheck, but in our league. But there are entry-level numbers that will give the opportunity for some of these people that want to kick the league to go after it. There's that aspect of it. The other one is, I've never been one to give sort of make the connection between excellence and somebody's paycheck. I mean, how many buffoons are multimillionaires? How many people bought Apple stock thinking they were getting an agricultural,
applesauce company.
an applesauce company or an apple something, and then woke up one morning multi-millionaires.
Yeah.
But we're still buffoons. So I don't, I really don't connect money and a paycheck with excellence. So I just, if we're all making $20 million a year, $30 million a year, and we sit here on the radio and go, hey, everybody, guess how much money I make doing this job? I don't even like it when I hear hockey players or baseball players or whatever talk about it. I think, really? Like, so all those fans that are spending all that money to go and watch you play, and you want to talk about the multi-million dollars that you make. Let me ask you guys this question. Would you do your jobs any differently if we were down in New York City in Manhattan right now talking about the Giants and the Yankees and doing the exact same show we're doing right now, but we're doing it in New York and we're all making $30 million a year doing it? Would you change how you approach your job?
Well,
Yes.
probably if you did, you probably wouldn't be successful when you think about it.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Because I wouldn't have my other job, for starters, so I'd have more time on this job.
Well, you would change outside. You would buy a bigger house, and you'd get rid of your other job, Barney.
I'm
and
not
all
a
that.
house guy.
But here's what you wouldn't do. You would prepare the same.
Yeah,
You would
that's
present
right.
the same. Because if you're not,
Barney's looking.
Do you have hold on? Do you have some sort of job lead for me, or are you just blowing smoke here?
well, I'm letting you know, because honestly, if you would have said yes, I would do my job completely differently, then shame on you for letting down all of us on this team that are presenting this show right now. So
No, I agree, Glenn. Yeah.
Yeah. So this whole thing that we need to talk about salaries, I don't think it's.
I get your point.
Here's one other smaller issue I have with it. It's smaller, but it's still important. In the world of perception matters, if an American down in Texas sees a headline of an entry-level CFL salary, he might not go to that workout camp because he says, you know what, I can make more money doing other things down here. I'm not going to go and keep this football dream alive. And we're going to miss out on that player and his skill set because he had the wrong perception of how much is paid in the league. And that, when it's all public and out there, that becomes a problem.
I'm on the fence on this one, and Colson's saying we're up against the clock here.
Can I ask one question?
If he can keep it, you guys got a minute.
Well, finish what you're going to say.
No, I get to talk to him again on Thursday.
Bill Baker, the former general manager, Bill Baker, the Undertaker, told me once when he was the GM, he said if a guy's in the locker room and he makes $60,000 and that's all he knows, he's perfectly happy until he finds out the guy in the cubicle next to him makes $70,000, then he's miserable.
That's life. That's how I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but I was in a negotiation with Bill Baker, and here's how it went down. He laid out all the DB's contracts in front of me, so I could see the number of every single DB there. And then he said, "Here's where you fit in, which is based on your years of experience, etc." And that's why. So you don't have to guess, you don't have to wonder. This is what everybody makes. You fit in nicely. And if you don't like it, and you'll know Bill Baker, if you don't like it, there's the door.
Yeah. Those are great bosses to work for.
And how did you feel
those
about
are great bosses to work for. That was the last question.
Okay.
We got to pick come on Thursday. Get to talk to him on Thursday. And Glenn played through the grindy times where they didn't have a lot of money around here. You had to work bingos, I think. Yeah. I think you work in the Nevada stand.
There's
Under the
three.
G.
There, by the way, just on a closing note, there's 3 CFL players currently getting a look in Minnesota with the Vikings. One of them is Dante Myers, the receiver from Saskatchewan. and you look at the way the Vikings are playing, and they're bringing in all these CFL players. Tomorrow, it'll be announced that Glen Suitor is working out with the Minnesota Vikings because they're so terrible
in the broadcast
and horrible.
booth.
They need anybody they can get.
In the broadcast booth, and then you're hiring me as your field guy. I'll dress that better if I'm your
30
on-field
million
guy.
a year, Barney. Barney, 30 million a year.
Glenn,
How does that sound?
Glenn, give me half of that. Give the other half to charity. Let's talk on Thursday, buddy.
You got it.